Good morning. My name is Susan, and I will be your host today for Soul School Network on Sunday, the 17th of August, 2025. And it is our absolute pleasure to have Shamir here with us today to enlighten us on Gnosticism and more. And so we're really delighted, and we'll turn it over to you shortly, Shamir. We will start out, however, with a meditation and just to sort of ground us and, quiet our minds and bring us into this present space to be together so that we can take in all that Shamir has to share. And I'd like to turn it over to Koryanka to do our meditation this morning. Koryanka, please.
Yes, sure. Let's do this grounding meditation. And we're going to do it, I'm feeling like a little shorter to give time for the presentation. I want to invite everyone to close your eyes, soften your gaze, if you will. We're going to center on our breathing, breathing in and out. You can exhale through the mouth or the nose, whatever feels good to you. We are going to become very present in the center of our hearts, the heart temple. I want to invite you to just gently become aware of any tension there might be in your body, starting with your head, your face, your neck. We're going to scan and find areas of tension if there is any, with the intention to relax that part of your body. Now we are going to pay attention to the shoulders, your back, your chest, and abdomen, our arms and hands, right and left, our legs and feet, right and left. And now we are going to intentionally move very gently that part of the body that feels maybe a little tense or tired, whatever there is that need to release any energy that isn't light. You can move gently in any way that you feel guided, that part of your body, that muscle, and let yourself be in a state of pure relaxation, feeling good, feeling safe, knowing that your body, it's a wonderful place to be, knowing that this earth, it's a wonderful place to be. You are at home in your body. You are at home in this beautiful earth. You are at home wherever you are. You are safe. You are grounded. You are loved. And that is perfect. We are present in this moment in time, united by the One. And so it is, and so it is, and so it is. We slowly can open up our eyes, and you can move your body just to make sure you're sitting comfortably wherever you are. And we are ready to listen to our presenter today.
Thank you so much, Koryanka. That was just beautiful, just to feel all that light pouring in. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So yes, let us get on with the topic of the day. And good morning to those of you who joined us during the meditation. So nice to see you. So I would like to introduce Shamir to you this morning. And the title today is The Spirit Within, Gnostic Wisdom and Energetic Anatomy. So let me just tell you about Shamir. Shamir is a mystic and healing guide based in the Sacred Valley of Peru. His work bridges ancient wisdom traditions, energy medicine, and modern spiritual inquiry to support others in reconnecting with their essence. Through retreats, one-on-one sessions, and storytelling, he invites people into deeper presence, self-remembrance, and embodied transformation. So I turn it over to you, Shamir. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, Koryanka, for such a beautiful meditation. And thanks everyone who's joining. Yeah, pleasure to be with you all. And maybe I'll first begin with sharing a little bit about myself, what's drawn me to this work, what has sparked my curiosity in diving into this world. And then I'll begin to share. So a little bit about me. I grew up in the United States. I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, in the suburbs of Atlanta, and from a very early age, I was drawn to the natural world, and I grew up in a pretty religious background in a household. Um, my parents, they followed a specific sect of Islam called Ismailism, and it's quite unique in that there was a lot of aspects that are informed by mystic traditions. And it was something that I was drawn to. And then as I became older, there were certain aspects of the community and the, say, dogma or some of the ways of operating that I started to have curiosities about. And in kind of my adolescent years, I started to connect with more of my rebel nature and started to embody that archetype quite strongly. Rejected a lot of things, wanted to learn for myself. And these are actually one of the tenets that I'm really grateful for in the upbringing that I had. And that some of the tenets of this tradition, the Smiley tradition, there was an emphasis on personal search. There was an emphasis on meditation. There was an emphasis on service. And I was really grateful for that. And there were some other aspects that I didn't feel in full resonance with it. I didn't really have an understanding of how to maybe operate or go about learning on my own. There was a propensity for me to want to be the good kid, and so wanting to learn and operate in the way that was being asked of me. I started to kind of follow the outline or the blueprint that would make me a good child, to earn the love and respect of my parents. Graduated college, started to work in corporate world for a while. And then in my early 20s, my father transitioned onto the other side. And this massive question arose of who am I? Who am I when I'm not following this seeking to be loved by my parents, specifically my father, to be the good one, without him as the anchor or compass in my life? Who am I? And this unraveled so much for me and really started to begin my process of inquiring, what does it mean to be I? What does it mean of who am I? And for many years, I just tried to cope with the loss. I wasn't allowing myself to feel the depths of all that that brought forth. And 6 years ago or so, I came across plant medicine, ayahuasca, which really cracked me open. And the way I like to perceive plant medicine, specifically ayahuasca, is that it doesn't really solve the problem. It just helps to mend the soil. And then it requires me to garden and to water all that has been worked on. Um, what I'm really grateful for plant medicine is that it helped me remember all the things that I had forgotten from my childhood, the connection to the natural world, this innocence, this connection to this place of what's essential. And for, say, the past few years since having worked with plant medicine, I re-access this level of sensitivity to the energetic world. And that's where a lot of my work is now. I work in the energetic space, either supporting plant medicine retreats, pranic healing, supporting individuals, integrating when they do have certain experiences and how to bring it back into the material world. And I've also grown in my love and appreciation for my upbringing, whereas maybe before I was rebellious and kind of judgmental, really embracing all that has offered me. And so this is really what leads us to today, the Gnostic teachings. What drew me to Gnosticism is when I was younger, growing up in an Islamic household, growing up in the south of the United States, there was a lot of churches. There was a lot of the presence of Christianity around me, and I had separated myself from Christianity or those who were Christian, and that I saw them as other. I saw them as different. And as I started to peel back the essence of the upbringing that I had and really tapping into some of the mystical traditions rooted in Sufism, when I came across Gnosticism, I started to see like, oh, this is the same thing, just relating to Christianity and had a larger reach and audience. And it helped to break my own mind or construct of separation. And for me, whenever I discover things that run across different times, different geographies, those are the threads that feel true that I like to pull on and explore further. And so for me, this is what embarked this curiosity and diving into the world of Gnosticism and seeing so many of the parallels with the Sufi tradition that informed how I grew up. Um, so yeah, that's a little bit about what pulled me into this world. Um, and for today, what I feel inspired to share and excited about is sharing some of the insights and some of the tenets and principles around Gnosticism. And while some of those can be conceptual or abstract, tying that in and weaving that together with the understandings that I've come across relating to how energy ultimately is what everyone's talking about in different forms, whether it's the Sufi tradition, the Gnostic tradition, the Kabbalah tradition, all of these mystical traditions, they're all speaking to this, the nature of something that can be inexplicable. And for me, energetics and energetic anatomy and how energy presents itself in this physical form uh, becomes a really solid blueprint for how to navigate this unraveling and this journey within oneself, within myself. So I'll start with just I'm I'm drawn to an interactive way, though I will be happy to speak. But at any time, if there are questions, thoughts, um, yeah, feel free to. I think there's the hand raising feature, and happy to engage. Um, and yeah, a little bit about that, and so we can just dive in with Gnosticism. And first, what is Gnosticism? Um, Gnosis is this Greek word meaning knowledge. Though not in the form of intellectualization or coming from the mind, rather coming from this direct experiential knowing of the divine, of that which is beyond oneself. And this marries very well with the Sufi tradition. The Sufi tradition came about a couple of centuries after the rise of Islam and had a very similar texture of connecting directly to this sense of divinity. And it's a curious thing how Gnosticism, being the mysticism aspect of Christianity, also came about a couple of centuries after Christianity started to begin forming. Um, and at the core, there's this belief that our salvation, our sense of liberation, comes not from blindly following through obedience or having faith in something that we haven't felt or experienced, but rather coming from awakening this divine nature that's within us, this divine spark that all of us carry, that come from some space and then falls or materializes into the material world. And that's one of the central tenets of Gnosticism. Another tenet is around the demiurge, or this aspect of illusion or layers of illusion. And this is often what transpires when this divine, pure essence comes into creation in the material world. There can be layers of illusion that start to build up. An image that I've really connected with as far as understanding or deepening my understanding with this is around how within each one of us there's this golden, shiny, lustrous kind of like Buddha statue. Um, and it's shiny and it contains all this wisdom. And as we navigate the world, layers of mud and dirt and things start building up onto it. And this path of gnosis, this path of Gnosticism or the Sufi way, it's less about becoming something and really a path of remembering or shedding these layers of what's been caked on to this eternal wisdom that's sitting within us. And this archetype of of the wisdom that each of us carry and enter into this world, this archetype is known as Sophia, this eternal wisdom that comes from this eternal source and descends into matter out of love. And it creates this conditioning for our soul's journey back home to where we came from. And in the Islamic tradition, what's so beautiful is we have this saying, Inna lillahi wa inna ilaihi rajiun, which means like, from Allah we come and to Allah we return. And we say this when people transition over into, when they leave the material world. And what I love about etymology or the study of words is that it applies to any language. And even the term Allah, in Arabic, it actually means the nothing. Al, the law is nothing. So from nothing we come, and to nothing we return. And there's something really beautiful and profound about it, of seeing the similarities in all these mystical traditions and even through the language, how it's conveyed. So this path of gnosis, this path of Gnosticism, again, it's not about becoming anything. It's really this inward path, this journey within of remembering and ultimately taking radical self-responsibility of all of what's happening internally and how that might play out in our material world. So all these Gnostic traditions or the Sufi tradition, they're quite old. They're ancient in a way, from around, thousands of years old. And I find there to be so much wisdom, and also there's a longing for me to connect that to modern practices. How does it apply here and now, and with the way that humans have evolved, societies have evolved, structures have evolved? And so I'm really drawn to Jungian psychology. Jung was heavily informed by Gnosticism, and some modern practices that I find that correlate or that support this inward path are around working with plant medicine. It can be facilitate, though, as I mentioned, doesn't solve for. Meditation, this tradition, this practice that goes across time, geography, traditions. Paying attention to the world of dreams, in that the dream world, which was something I was drawn to as a child, for my adolescent and my early 20s and 30s, even, I just stopped paying attention to my dreams, just couldn't remember them. And over the past few years, it's come back online, and I really can feel the connection that occurs in the dream world between the subconscious and the conscious experience of how I perceive the world. It's as if it's a way in which the essence of myself, my soul, my spirit can communicate in language and symbols, and it's beautiful connecting to the dream space. And another aspect is that there are parallels here between Gnosticism and healing trauma, which is around, like, let's say, shedding false identity, reclaiming our fragments that we may abandon or leave behind. And ultimately, it's serving as this path of dissociation and fragmentation to a path of wholeness and being fully present with what is here and now, again and again and again. And this is where the application of energy medicine, or anatomically how energy exists within each one of our beings, has played such a fundamental role in helping me understand this bridging between the physical material world and the world of the unseen, the world of energetics, which is the fabric essentially of everything. Even the word energy, uh, en, inside, internal, en, and ergos, which is referring to the composition or the way things are structured, the way things are formed. So energy, uh, even in the word itself, is speaking of the inner composition, the inner structure. And for me, this has become a really beautiful blueprint in relating less to concepts, things that might be abstract, and giving me a blueprint of how to navigate working with what is alive moment to moment and increasing my felt sense into the inner world. Carolyn Myss had written this book called Anatomy of the Spirit, and she's written subsequent books as well. And it was just beautiful timing. I came across this book right as I started to explore plant medicine, and it brought language to concepts that I was aware of and felt drawn to, but didn't have a way to formulate it or speak about it. And effectively, in this book, she outlines how all of these different mystical traditions, and specifically in her book, she has awareness around the Christian tradition and the sacraments, as well as the Kabbalah tradition, or from Judaism. And from my upbringing, having grown up in an Islamic tradition that was informed by Sufism, I was also able to see the threads that connected all of them. And she mapped it to the chakra system, which we've seen images around and is the basis of the Hindu tradition. And effectively was articulating how there's all these different things that are all talking about the same thing, and it's all about energy. And in this book, she goes through and outlines each one of the seven chakras within our physical being, though beyond our physical being, we have our etheric body, our mental body, our emotional body, our spiritual body. And so within our spiritual body, which is the largest of our fields, there are more than seven chakras, but for the purpose of today, we'll focus on these seven centers and explore each one of them and what they each offer, what it might look like when there are deficiencies or excess in each one of these centers, and some of the parallels that the centers hold in relationship to Gnosticism, to this inward path. And speaking about the chakras, they're like living motors, if you will, these living entities, these living parts of ourselves. The way the visualization that's really been helpful for me and the way I experience it is it's like a gear that's kind of consistently moving, opening and closing. They're not static. And in the process of our expansion to awareness of ourselves, um, there's a kind of a system or a process that happens where it kind of moves from the base of the spine, from our lowest chakra, the root, and kind of moves all the way up through. And then as this level of clearing and expansion occurs, then we go through it again and again and again and again. And there's um, aspects of this that reflect this nonlinear aspect of this Gnostic path, of this inward journey of remembrance, clearing, and healing. So we'll start with the base, kind of at the root of it all. Um, the root chakra, located at the base of the spine, in Sanskrit, which is where this framework originated from. It's called the Muladhara, Muladhara meaning root or base. And the root chakra carries this message of all is one. And relating to Christianity, and even within the tradition that I grew up in, this is often embodied through baptism, through this anointing of belonging to a tribe, to a community, creating a sense of safety, aspects of survival, and some of the themes associated with this chakra around our ability to trust, our sense of home, our sense of where we rooted. And just a beautiful meditation this morning to remember that Earth is our home. And there can sometimes be illusions that transpire relating to the root chakra that our sense of belonging is limited to, let's say, for example, for me, the religion that I grew up in. And so all of those who are not are other. And this played out in my own process and seeing that it was what provided a sense of safety and security, and also as a stepping stone to recognizing that there's an interconnectedness with all of life and not just a certain subset. And the wisdom in the root chakra is around learning to trust in the physical world, in the way in which we are existing, this vessel that's holding this divine spark and being able to relate to the earth, to all that it's holding, to all the creatures that live here among us. So in the root chakra, when there's some deficiencies in the flow through that gear, as I was mentioning, if it's not, let's say, breathing properly as an analogy, what can transpire is there can be a disconnection from the physical body. The root isn't stable, it's not open, it might be closed or it's not flowing. And so there's a disconnection from this anchoring vessel. We might be notably underweight. We may have poor boundaries, financial difficulty, um, difficulty in remaining disciplined, and a sense of chronic organization. Things are kind of always out of whack. Oops. And on the flip side, if there's an excessive amount of energy that's kind of built up within the root chakra, if it's not releasing properly, it's not flowing, then this can lead to obesity, hoarding, holding on to things as a physical manifestation of this center holding on to energy, greed, really rigid boundaries, a fear of change, feeling tired chronically. And so this is how, and when the inner composition isn't in flow or isn't stable, um, the deficiency or excess in the physical world, it can manifest in these ways. And at a physical level, what transpires when energetically there's something in disorder with the root, it maps to certain organs. Each one of these centers, if at the energetic level, the first expression often occurs in the organs as an expression of these energetics. And so being at the base of the spine, disorders relating to our bowels, our large intestines, or the way that we hold ourselves up on this earth, with our legs, our feet, our knees, our pelvic bone, there can be ailments that we experience, dis-ease in those areas. Now, how does this relate to Gnosticism? Or how does what wisdom does this carry as an expression of a Gnostic or mystical way of living? Um, well, going back in Gnosticism, there's this descent into matter where the spark comes into the body, and there can be this forgetting of our divine nature, which can be mirrored in the root chakra's fear or sense of separation. And also this illusion sometimes of the tribe. The tribe, while it offers, especially in our early years, a sense of safety and community, we need it for survival. Attaching strongly to the material world and to this set only is who I belong to, it touches on that demiurge or that illusion that comes in the Gnostic teachings. And healing at the root chakra level involves recognizing that separation itself perpetuates this illusion. And it's a catalyst. It's where it starts, this awakening of the wisdom or the archetype of Sophia to integrate from the body to remembering that divine spark. And in Eastern traditions, this is also sometimes known as Kundalini energy or awakening this um, remembrance or divine connective energy through the central channel that runs right in front of the spine from the base all the way up to the crown. This is where it all starts, is our connection to the earth as our home, our sense of security, our sense of safety. And it's the foundation, it's the pillar from which all other forms of expansion and self-awareness through the other centers rely upon, having a strong foundation. So next we move up the spine, move up the center into, in Sanskrit, what's known as the Swadhyasana. It's the sacral chakra. Um, Swadhisthana means sweetness, the sense of bringing sweetness. And the second chakra, our sacral chakra, carries this message of honoring one another. And this has to do with our relationships, our emotions, some aspects of power identity, or sorry, power dynamics. And in Christian tradition, the act of communion, this relating to one another and relating to healing in this area. The sacral chakra is in our lower abdomen, right around our belly button. Themes here again around relationships, our source of creativity, our sexual energy, our vitality, and also around boundaries. And the lessons and some of the themes around the sacral chakra are around embracing sacred relationships with others, tapping into our creative power, recognizing that sexual power and creative power, they're the same. They're accessing our vitality. And same with healing. This idea of healing is really around having strong vitality. It also comes with a sense of strong emotional responsibility. And it's in the word responsibility, the ability to respond to our emotions, or when energy is moving through our sacral center, how do we respond? Not react, but respond. And reaction, strong emotional reactions are often an indication that the center, this mechanism, may have an excess amount of energy. It's not flowing openly. Having intensely strong reactions to emotions can be an indication of excess energy built up in the center. Highly sensitive to the emotions of others and kind of taking that on also is an indication of potentially excess energy in this field, which ties into poor boundaries. Being emotionally dependent or codependent with another or with organizations. This is something that Speaking to my journey earlier, so much of my identity, my sense of myself, was strongly connected to what did my father perceive of me? And there was a sense of having an excess amount of energy built up in my sacral chakra, where I didn't have a strong sense of self outside of something besides him. So there was a sense of attachment, almost obsessively, of wanting to operate based off of what would be good for him. This can also take the form of acting out sexually or sexual addictions when there's an excess amount of this energy and it's not regulated. And on the flip side, there's a deficiency. When there's a deficiency in the flow or the energetics in the sacral area, this can lead to a denial of pleasure for self, a lack of excitement for life, um, rigidity within the body or attitude, a coldness, both physically in the body, a sense of coldness that's running throughout, as well as in the way that we're relating to one another, a fear of intimacy, fear of change. These are some of the things that can happen when there's a deficiency of flow within this mechanism of the sacral chakra. And on a physical level, as it expresses itself, this can show up as disorders within the reproductive organs, lower back pain, just a lack of appetite for food, for enjoyment, for life itself, kind of withdrawing a bit from engaging in life. I deeply did this one at a certain point in my life where I had a very stoic approach. I would witness things, but I wouldn't engage with life itself. And this was something that became an invitation for me to explore what is it that is leading to this way of interacting with life or lack of interacting with life. And so these physical manifestations, when there's an awareness or an association of what the energetics are behind it, it served as an entry point into then starting to cultivate and work with these energies and start to develop tools on how to clear, augment, help expand this mechanism, the chakra, that's constantly taking in and expelling out energy in our flow. Now, in relating to Gnosticism, the Gnostic path honors the union of opposites. I believe it's eros gamos, the sacred union of that which may at first seem opposite. So going back to how we are formed, this divine essence or soul becoming in union with the body, the feminine and masculine polarity, it is in the union that life itself continues. And the archetype of wisdom, Sophia, the sacral chakra holds this impulse to relate to another, not from a place of depending on another or from a place of codependency, but as this act of co-creating and engaging deeply with one another from a place of also recognizing oneself or the sacred individuation or expression of the divine spark. This has provided me with so much, and the big body of work for me continues to be with the sacral chakra of how to relate. And a question that I often ask myself is when regarding relationships, taking inventory, not just of myself, but in relationships, is does this relationship reflect the divine spark within myself and the recognition of that within another? Or does it reinforce some illusion? An illusion that I had for a long period of time for myself was that in order for me to belong, I needed to take on a certain role that I, as I am not enough. And so I need to be something. And this expressed itself as being the helper, or as I mentioned before, the good one. And there was something that was true, that is true, about that as my essence of being one who's generous and helpful. And it was cloaked a little bit in that mud of I needed to be maybe overgiving to earn my place amongst the tribe. And this was an illusion that I had, in a sense, created. And this has been a really strong compass for me in my life regarding relationships of is there a harmonious relationship? Is there a flow of both giving and receiving? Or am I overpouring? Am I pouring into it because I feel like this is the only way I can maintain or keep this relationship? Um, so yeah, just sharing a little bit of a personal anecdote there of relating to the sacral chakra and how that's shown up for me. And next, this kind of leads us into the sense of self, where in our right at our sternum, our solar plexus, our third chakra, Manipura is the term in Sanskrit, which translates into lustrous gem. This having luster, this really shiny, precious object thing. Um, right here, right in our kind of center of our torso, in our solar plexus. And whereas we've established this all is one, honor one another, and now in our third chakra, it's honoring yourself, honoring myself. And the solar plexus carries the themes around personal power, um, aspects of our will, where do we direct our attention, our intentions, integrity, developing coherence between our words and our actions, and really the source of sovereignty, the source of worthiness, to have a sense of self-esteem that I, as I am, with this precious gem that's shiny, I am enough as I am. And this chakra is around really reclaiming authority over all of our choices and allowing ourselves to be guided from something within ourselves and developing a sense of that personal power. Not power from a place of exerting it onto others, but being able to have this force or channeling our vitality upward into guiding our actions. When there's a deficiency or when this is maybe blocked or not flowing, there can be a sense of weak will. We might say, I've experienced this, where I'll say I'll do things, but I don't do them, particularly for myself, poor self-discipline, low self-esteem, but also in the organs, poor digestion, eating disorders, chronic fatigue, um, high cholesterol, diabetes. These are aspects you can kind of see where it's on the upper side of our digestive system and right below our heart. So it expresses itself with the material that's closest to it in those organs. Um, we can become passive, unreliable, both to ourselves and to others. And this can often lead to an attraction to stimulants. And even having from a mental level a sense of victim mentality or blaming others in the sense of deferring our power, not taking that sense of full responsibility for ourselves. And on the flip side, if there's an excessive amount of energy in our solar plexus that isn't moving, um, this is where it can express itself as being overly aggressive, manipulative, in a sense, coercing through applying power outwardly, an intense need for control, stubbornness, very rigid, um, competing, and that there's a sense of uh, proving the worth of self in relation to another over really being anchored in I, as I am, I'm enough, I'm shiny, I'm beautiful, I'm worthy, um, and even manipulative is when there's an excess of this energy built up. And it's interesting in my own journey to see at times when there were deficiencies and then it would swing into being excessive and it kind of serving as this a pendulum of, okay, here's where what it's like to be balanced or in the middle. And it's a funny thing with balance. It's like there's very few moments in my life where I'm like, oh, I'm balanced. It's recognizing that I'm off balance, and that's serving as a little guiding mechanism of, okay, where can I be more centered, if you will. Um, and relating to Gnosticism or even in the Sufi tradition, this is a rebel archetype that I was referring to earlier, where there's this um, inner desire to challenge false authority, whether it's an empire, the church, um, the hierarchical structures that can sometimes be influenced by ego or power. Um, and it's not just outward. Sometimes within for myself, for example, there was this inner tyrant, this ego aspect that was conditioned by fear. And in accessing and going deeper into connecting to this lustrous gem, it starts to challenge that aspect as well of what's maybe conditioned by fear or false authorities that have permeated within, and start to discern and to peel back so that that shininess can be accessed. And
Shamir,
this
can
all,
I jump in with a quick
yeah, sure,
question?
sure, of course.
Sorry to interrupt you, and we certainly see you as a shining gem, so you've done well on that side of things. You spent a lot of time talking about sort of our connection with ourselves and our community, our self-identity. Um, is there an aspect of Gnosticism, and this has been interesting, or I'm interested in learning more about this on sort of us all being the one, or you know, a what would you say, all interconnected as maybe a larger sense of community, the soul, our souls being one.
Yeah, there's an interesting aspect within the mystical traditions that start to become growing comfortable with the paradox of everything is connected, all is one, and also the unique expression that each individual carries as the expression of the divine spark that is contained within the being, the physical being. So it's an interesting, it's not binary. It's either I myself am everything, though there's a way to access the infinite world through accessing and going deeper within the self. And this is less around Gnosticism and more from some other schools of thought around um, if everything is all one and nothing is expressing itself in its own unique essence and its in kind of its own unique flavor or texture, then it's quite boring. There's nothing to experience because it's all one together without any textures of difference or distinction. And distinction doesn't necessarily mean separation. It's simply that it is a way for consciousness or for this divine aspect of each thing to experience itself through relating to another. And so it's an interesting kind of paradox to hold as both simultaneously being true, that we are all one, and also there's a distinct expression in the form of Greg, in the distinct form of Shamir, in the distinct form of Susan, and that it's expressing itself in these ways in order for it to remember that it's all connected.
Very nice. Thank you for that.
Of course. Thanks for asking. Um, this is an aspect of mysticism which I can touch on in a little bit, but certain qualities that um, really being comfortable with the paradox or the contradictions that we experience in life itself. to break from this black and white, right and wrong, binary way of perceiving, when there's room to embrace the textures of all the subtleties simultaneously. This is a path of a mystic, a path of those who are following the Gnostic teachings, or that like it can all be true. And in my divine nature, I can accept it all. I can love it all. And in my personality, I don't like it all, and that's okay. It was an interesting thing to break for me. Is I had this paradigm of first I need to like something, and then I can grow to love it. And something arrived for me of like, actually, I love everything when I'm really in that space. And then as a human, I don't like everything, and that's okay. I can accept that. And that's where I'm at. Um, well, this is a beautiful segue into when moving from this all is one, honor each other, honor one another, honor oneself, and ultimately the heart, anahata in Sanskrit, meaning unstruck, unwavering in this sense of where divine power actually lives in the heart. Um, and this is our capacity to give and receive unconditionally, um, to feel heartbreak, to feel grief, and to also feel forgiveness, and to expand the center, um, love not as necessarily a sentiment, but as this force that at a spiritual energetic level allows for transmuting. Um, and for me, this is perhaps my biggest, I'd say, purpose in life is to discern between the heart and the mind. And I feel like it's the longest journey I have to take is this, whatever, 10 inches from my mind to my heart, is to make this for my life, is to honor what's in the heart. Um, I've been blessed with uh, a sharp mind, and I've maybe overpowered it or kind of overfed it in my life. And so a lot of what I'm spending my time doing is orienting to my heart for forgiveness, for compassion. And it's been interesting to see how the intensity of judgment has really served as the kind of key to showing me the intensity to which I can hold empathy and compassion. But it first manifested in this density of judgment and separation. And yeah, speaking about the heart, it's this electromagnetic mechanism that can perceive uh, in a very intelligent way beyond what can be sometimes registered in the mind. And when there is a deficiency in the flow, we can become critical, judgmental, narcissistic, um, feeling alone. This widespread kind of thing that we're dealing with around depression, often associated with a void or deficiency in the heart center. And on the flip side, when there's an excessive amount, overly sacrificing, I'm giving too much. I cling to things from a place of attachment, or I become codependent. And in the physical realm, heart disorders, lung disorders, with the arms, shortness of breath, kind of a collapsed chest, or even going to the backside, tension between the shoulder blades, holding on to things, um, or not allowing it to express fully. It's often where a lot of grief can be stored, is in the back between the shoulder blades. And this is at the core, um, from a mystical tradition, the suffering that is often experienced and maybe manifest in the material world through relationships, through circumstances. It's this heartbreak of the mystic descending and fragmenting from this eternal loving space, and then entering into the material world, which can be cloaked with illusion, separation. There's this deep longing to reconnect to that juicy flavor of love. And it's through the heart that the Gnostic path, the path of a mystic, is uh, deepened, continuing, revisiting the human heart. um, and connects to the Christ archetype, not as a redeemer, not as one who will be a martyr and sacrifice oneself for others, but rather this loving consciousness that's in the present moment through being with the heart. Now we move up and going kind of speaking to what I have articulated as what I feel like is kind of my major assignment right now in my life is around the purification through the use of the voice, through the throat chakra. Throat chakra is referred to as Visuddha in Sanskrit, which means purification. And the message that it carries is around surrendering our personal will to the divine will. And the voice being the primary mechanism to practice that surrender. This is kind of related to confession, if you will, in Christianity, and not about confession from a place of let me tell you what I'm feeling guilty about, but really about speaking what is true, listening to what's inside and expressing it, and learning to speak with integrity through coherence with all of the system, and speaking truth with clarity, and being able to apply one's will through the voice to create these frequencies and vibrations within the world to share. And they're pretty straightforward. When there's deficiencies or excess, either there's a fear of speaking or a weak voice, soft voice, kind of a tendency to be introverted. Not that introversion necessarily means that the throat chakra is out of balance, but perhaps to a level of like wanting to hide or shrink oneself, or difficulty expressing what is happening internally in the internal world. And on the flip side, if one's taking up a lot of space, has a difficulty listening, gossiping, talking about others, or interrupting others, too much talking, is when there's a buildup or it's not flowing properly, um, is how that can express itself. And it's not just related to the throat. In the physical expression of it, there can be tension in the neck, the jaw, the lymphatic system, our ears, our nose, our throats. Um, in fact, actually, something that registered for me was I used to be a pretty heavy smoker. Um, and on an energetic level, I started to see how me reaching for something to smoke and put into my lungs was also a way to pack my voice into myself because of my fear for expressing it outwardly. It gave me something to, in a sense, touch energetically what was being held, and I was packing it into myself, weakening my voice. Um, so it was interesting to notice that correlation within myself and to start peeling back into the energetic level. And from a mystic or from a Gnostic perspective, there's kind of a demand of our essence to speak from this awakened place from within ourselves, not from our ego, but to speak truth as we perceive it, when we perceive it, even if it's defying convention. Uh, Many mystics have been persecuted because they challenge the structure, the governing powers of the institutions. And so there can be a fear that maybe is inherited over lifetimes. And so to actually speak what is true and doing so from a loving place, but also not shying away from what is being experienced from a place of nicety or not wanting to rock the boat, is an important assignment for anyone wanting to um, deepen their sense of self-awareness and awakening oneself, but also allowing it to be witnessed through the expression. And what's fascinating about the throat is that it's kind of equidistant from the heart and from the mind. And this has been like the most challenging, but also the most fun puzzle of noticing what does it feel like when I'm speaking from my mind? What does it feel like when I'm speaking from my heart? And there's a different texture, there's a different um, resonance within my body. And so this has been a beautiful compass to start paying attention to what's the energy behind when I'm speaking and where is it coming from? Uh, and when I'm speaking from my mind, it can sometimes be um, I don't really have a sensation in the rest of my body. When I'm speaking from my heart or from a deeper place, I can feel those vibrations that are happening through my torso down into even sometimes through my spine, even into my legs. So it's been an interesting tool to start paying attention. What does it feel like when I'm speaking? Where might it be coming from? And the last two chakras I'll kind of speak to together, even though they're slightly different, but we have the Agya chakra, sometimes known as the third eye. Agya is like the ability to perceive and command in Sanskrit. And it carries this message of seeking the truth, living right here between our eyebrows, carrying the themes of insight and perception. Um, and then our crown chakra, which is Sahasrara, which means a thousandfold. All these little pieces, thousand of them, all together in one in our crown. It's like our antenna, our connection to something greater than our physical body. Top of our head, our connection to the divine, that unity consciousness, um, and the message of living in the present moment. And so there's an association of how we are registering our perception, either through our five senses or the senses beyond, through our felt sense. And how is that registering? Is it contributing towards a sense of illusion, or does it feel true? And the tension that's there between what we're perceiving, is it colored by fear, things relating to the ego? Do we become rigid in our perception? Do we have a level of imagination that can entertain the thousand possibilities that may be alive in this one moment, or are we fixated on one? And this is really about our vision, our ability to perceive, not just with our eyes, but through our feelings, or tapping into the world of energetics and how that registers within our cognitive conscious mind. Um, in a deficient perspective, there can be this like, this is the one way, the only way, this is right, this is wrong. Um, Also, when there's deficiencies, difficulty remembering dreams. This was me for a while. Um, Having difficult time remembering things. And on the flip side, when there's an excess amount of energy, there can be hallucinations. There being this veil over what is in the material reality that's being colored by some other form of perception, um, fixation, obsessions. And also, if there's an excessive amount, if the crown has, when I say excess, I don't mean like it is, and for any of these chakras, it's not that excess as in too much. It's more so that it's at a level that is, let's say the crown chakra is really wide, maybe like, a foot and a half. The chakra is really expanded, but the rest of the centers are smaller. And so by excess, it means basically out of alignment or inability for it to move through the entire system in coherence. And so over time, the level of the capacity that each person holds can expand and decrease. Hopefully, it's oriented towards expansion. But this is what I mean by excess or deficiency. It's not that there's ever a point where, like, oh, this is too much in totality. It's how is it aligning with the rest of the system? And when we're accessing the upper centers, there can sometimes be, with so much of my life or my early part of my years was really orienting in the base centers, about security, about relating to others, and about developing a sense of self. And then as the upper center started to expand, it became almost like I wanted to chase it. I wanted to orient only towards the upper centers. And so over intellectualizing my experiences, becoming addicted in a way to like spiritual pursuits, but also led to some confusion. And as energy started to become more concentrated in my upper centers, I dissociated more from my body. And so there's this balance of striking between expanding while also staying rooted. And it's this like the central channel of remaining anchored like a pillar to the ground and also extending as the body allows, as the energy allows in the expansion. And this ultimately is the return of, from a Gnostic mystical perspective of, okay, we descend into physical form and then we reascend from our material into this remembering of all that is from the spirit, from the energetic world. And it's not about escaping the world, but awakening within it. And this is where the energetic anatomy becomes so helpful, and that it's not about separating. It's actually about recognizing it's all contained within and how to integrate both together. Returning to unity, going from this fragmented part into wholeness. Um, we say holy or sacred. Well, holy, to be whole, to remember, to remember, to put it all back together. And Carolyn Myss in her book has this beautiful quote, which was that your biography becomes your biology. And so the story, the things that we live throughout our life, they start to become part of our being. And then working on it energetically and becoming aware of these aspects start to give us the tools or the blueprint of how to remember and to return to wholeness. So those are the centers. I'll just close with what this might look like in modern form of being a embodied. What does it mean to embody mysticism or the Gnostic path today? And I feel there's a few qualities or attributes of what it looks like in the embodied form when these energetics start to become expressed in the way of one's being. Um, First and foremost, this going back to gnosis, knowledge not through the mind, but through direct experience. That's been facilitated for me through meditations, connecting with the natural world, plant medicines. But ultimately, that there isn't some outside force outside of myself that is the divine aspect. There's a fragment of it within me and within everything. And so to recognize that, not through the mind, but through first experiencing it myself. And that allows for there to be an increased level of trust to this inner guidance, this we call it intuition, source, spirit, higher self. There's so many different names for it, but it's this whispering voice that's always there. And it's driving when given permission to navigate this world and not from any false constructs outside of ourselves. This is facilitated through contemplation, through self-inquiry, through silence, solitude, prayer. What a beautiful tool to channel all of this energy and point it in a direction um, beyond ourselves. And meditation, again, not as a means of escape, but to grow the capacity to listen more deeply to that innermost aspect of ourselves. Kind of going back to your question, Greg, this aspect of becoming comfortable with ambiguity, things that are mysterious, the contradiction, seeing beyond binaries of light, dark, right, wrong, this is sacred, this is profane. Um, there's something expressing itself, sometimes cloaked in illusion, but underneath it being driven by the spark. And this longing for union that, yes, I am a lustrous gem, and also there's something that I belong to that's greater than myself. Um, and this kind of dance between individuation and union and dancing with it, spirit and matter. Embracing nonlinear growth. As I mentioned, while these centers can open up from the base all the way up to the crown, imagine kind of a really thin channel. And then as the base expands, then it moves upward to the sacral and starts to expand. And then there's this kind of completed cycle, if you will, of let's say round one. And when I first experienced this, I'm like, oh, I'm so grateful that I addressed all my security and scarcity issues. I don't have to revisit that again. Uh, but actually, it was about, okay, I expanded a bit and now revisit it to expand it again. So there's this spiral nature of revisiting again and again these centers, not from a linear way of operating, but revisiting something maybe with a different perspective or increased level of capacity to be with the depths of what might be there, whether blocks or excess energy. And this aspect of death and rebirth again and again, losing beliefs, attachments, beliefs around who I think I am. And that perennial question of who am I? What is this I that I'm referring to? Um, and the last piece is there's, of course, the inward capacity of growth, but ultimately, how does it show up in how I relate to life? Am I able to be present with what is, even when it's uncomfortable, from the mundane and boring to the extremely exciting? And can I be present not just at the macro level, but with each gesture, every interaction that I'm having with, whether it's a passerby or someone I'm having a deep chat with each breath? Embodied presence is, for me, the paramount indication of someone walking a life of a mystic. Um, and also the interconnectedness of all things. Am I quick to judge, to criticize, to compare with something that I'm witnessing outside of myself? Or am I allowing myself to see the divine nature in my dreams, in other creatures, other beings, other humans, in the natural world? Even in pain and grief, am I able to see it as an expression of something that's divine? And the practices that have helped me cultivate these qualities, if you will, um, check in daily with my energy, check in with each of the centers. How's this feeling? I've started practicing pranic healing, which has been a really powerful way to access these centers with the hands through feeling and visualizations, but just checking in with the centers every day. I journal my dreams to see what symbols are there across different dreams. What's been really powerful is not just the dream itself, but in keeping a log to revisit, let's say, a month or 2 months worth of dreams. And if there are certain symbols that keep arising or certain experiences, maybe there's some material in my subconscious that's really trying to express itself that either I'm not wanting to look at or just seeking to avoid. And when it comes to the purification through the throat chakra, which I was saying is kind of my bigger piece of work right now, is around having this honest inner dialogue. Can I really be honest with myself about that really hurts me? I don't like that. This is how it makes me feel. And really confronting some of the tendency I've had of bypassing to just be oriented towards the nice one, the good one, the helping one. And ultimately just spending time in nature. I have a beautiful garden and working with the plants, allowing myself to connect has allowed me to open up, perceiving beyond the five senses and starting to listen more intuitively to what's available. And yeah, I guess I'll ask a question, not necessarily for anyone to answer in this moment, really an invitation of are there any experiences that you may be navigating, whether at a physical level, mental level, emotional level, that may be serving as an invitation to connect deeper to what's true for you and how energy might be expressing itself through these experiences? Mm. Yeah, I'll pause there. I've been speaking so much. Thank you all for listening, for giving your time and attention. I'd love to entertain if there are questions or thoughts, comments.
Shamir, wow, thank you so much. What a beautiful understanding you've given us of the chakra system through Gnosticism. It's just incredible and insightful. Thank you for that. I'm sure there are questions, so I'm going to turn it over. I think Fernando may have a question for you. Go ahead, please.
My question was, I noticed, Shamir said that he, is connected with his dreams, and does that mean like, is that some kind of form of astral projecting? And also that there's more than seven chakras. My whole life I thought there was only seven, and that there's a way. And now, like I'm finding out that there's more. Like how many more? Like I don't have to know like all of them, but I just want to know how many more. I'm just curious.
Sure. Wonderful question. So the seven chakra system is referring to the seven energy centers that are housed within our physical being, within this vessel. So there are two other systems that I've come across. One says that there are 10, one says that there are 12. Um, these other three or five, they exist within our other bodies beyond our physical body. So right around our physical body, we have our kind of etheric body that extends maybe like 10 centimeters on average outside of our body. And then we have our emotional body, our mental body, and then ultimately our spiritual body. Our spiritual body being the largest of our bodies. They take up when someone says, oh, you have a really large presence or your aura, that's often referring to this felt nature to the spiritual body. And this contains memories of previous lives or maybe things that have occurred when this divine spark manifested in other expressions. And within the spiritual body, this is where the other chakras are housed. So if you imagine like above our heads, there's other centers. So some may call it the higher self, accessing, when people say I access a previous life or I have memories that are coming in from another lifetime. It's not from often within the mind, it's connecting to these other centers. And so whether there's 10, whether there's 12, I think what I find to be the most important from that teaching is that there's information and energy that exists outside of our physical body. And a helpful way to access that is cultivating that within to open up. And once the centers are open, there's an increased capacity to access other centers. And this kind of ties into what you were saying about the dreams. Going deep into the dream state, whether it's lucid dreaming, participating actively in the dreams, becoming conscious in the dream state, for me is a way of, in a sense, the way I map that is accessing the eighth, ninth, 10th chakras, and that is starting to connect to something that's beyond the physical and connecting to this fabric of what's in existence in the energetic or spiritual realms. Astral, I don't actively choose to go and show up for other people or visit, though I've had people reflect to me that this is what they sometimes experience. What's been most important for me is before going to bed to consciously register that I would like to be active in my dreams and to become aware. And when I wake up, when I enter into my conscious waking state, I have my eyes closed for a couple of minutes and the dreams are very present. So I'm just registering that information into my conscious mind. And this is a way for me to keep inventory. And for me, what's been fascinating along with these mystical traditions is that so many cultures have uh, a lot of emphasis on the dream state, whether it's the Aborigine culture of Australia, the shamanic cultures here in the jungle. Paying attention to dreams is, in a way, accessing the subconscious material that doesn't really have language, but uses the symbols and representations to communicate certain things that may be going on at the spirit level to the conscious state.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for asking.
Thank you for that, Shamir. Who else has a question or comment for Shamir? Michael Swinwood, you're very quiet today.
Quiet. Well, I don't want to start talking because we'll be here another hour. That was just an excellent presentation, just fantastic. Um, really um, drawing from your own experience into mysticism is a journey. It's just an incredible journey. It reflects a lot of my own experiences in learning about who I am. Um, Gnosticism is really what has us in Peru because of Samael Aun Weor and Samael's writings about Gnosticism, which in essence are the Inca teachings. The Inca spirituality is really Gnosticism. But Gnosticism flows through everything because it's knowledge. And that knowledge is divine. I often say to Susan, it's called the Sacred Valley for a reason. I mean, the sacred architecture that flows from Pisac to Ollantaytambo and then all the way to Machu Picchu, that's the chakra system in the human being. And the so-called ruins exemplify exactly what you're talking about. And then personally, for me personally, I've just gone through a cancer diagnosis of my throat, and I have just gone through the treatment aspect. I'm in the recovery aspect, and I knew all of this before this manifestation. And of course, I stopped my treatment at a particular point by saying to the allopathic tradition, I stop here now. You've done what you've done for me. I now go back to the path of self-realization to come to the understanding of what it is that I couldn't swallow.
Mm.
And I've been a practicing lawyer for 40 years, and the last 25 has been for Indigenous people. And I couldn't swallow what I was being told all the time, every time I went into court, every time I had to tell the truth about the people I was acting for. The system was saying, no, sorry, go away. We don't want to hear you. And that manifested in my throat chakra. And for both Susan and I, it was a tap on the shoulder of having to reorient our voices towards what we know, which is gnosis. We know it. And so it's very experiential what you spoke about today for me, because I'm a living, breathing example of being given that opportunity. It wasn't, the dis-ease wasn't bad all the way because it introduced something deeper that had to be tapped into. And you spoke about
it. Thanks so much for sharing such a deep personal experience that you're navigating at the moment, and also the teachings that um, are coming in more strongly for you. There's, of course, um, the the place for receiving support externally, and the recognition that energetically the circumstances that you were within was, in a sense, creating a buildup or distortion, and to recognize that, um, yeah, there's a place for both, for the support of immediate treatment externally, as you were speaking to, and then ultimately tending to the energetics, which is underneath it all. And yeah, and Carolyn Myss's book, she kind of spoke about some issues when things do manifest in the form of cancer or in some really aggressive forms of disease. And it was curious in that she had brought forth that sometimes it's an expression of like karmic releasing or karmic clearing that is sometimes required to go through. So it was interesting to see that even some of these energetics may not be tied to even this physical lifetime. That something, these centers, if they are associated with something from the spiritual realm, can start to express itself to things that may be occurring now, and also things that are in a sense karmic. So highly like suggest her material. It's really beautiful, and
Hmm.
I'm happy to hear that
It's
you're also on the recovering side.
yeah, it's so insightful is really what it is. I mean, it's so insightful in that in in viewing through the lens of all the spirituality that I mean, I have much of the same experience you had in terms of dogma and religion. You know, I was a Roman Catholic. I was
Mm,
brought up in the I wanted to be a priest for crying out loud when I was 15 years of age. But you know, I became a questioner, I became a seeker, and I got turned on to seeking by very inspirational human beings. And in retrospect, when I look back on my life in retrospect, it was all delivered. It was always given. You know, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. This has been our lives in essence. Susan and I have experienced personally mentors who have shown us the path, if you will, and brought about transitions in our lives through various means. Always, the gifts are always delivered. You just don't like the package sometimes. That's all. But when the package arrives and you see the gift in it, then that's when you're paying your karma.
mm,
You've actually jumped. You've they jump started you basically. So it's like the cables get reapplied and boom, you get this urge to spur it on. As you were saying, your life is about discernment, is what you really said, between the head and the heart. And the aspect of where I'm at myself in my existence, I've been given a second chance in the sense that I was brought this, it was given to me, it was shown to me, and I went through it, and I'm going through it with bigger spiritual eyes just
mm,
by virtue of that gift. It's not a burden, it was a gift. And so what you're talking about should become each and every person's undertaking, which is discernment between your mind and your heart. And go to your heart, understand that's where your mind is, and work on where there is the waiver. Where's the waiver? Because that's what you're talking about is alignment. And that alignment comes about through that lustrous diamond that you're speaking of. And it really exists in the third eye as willpower. It's willpower. It's the will to open the power that is going to bring you to exactly what your purpose is. And your purpose is to serve. You're here to serve. And in that service, we bring about salvation. That's the deliverance of the Christ. The Christ isn't coming on a horse. You're the horse. You're the white horse. And within the white horse, that divine flame can only be expanded and put into what God is, which is fire, the treatise on cosmic fire. The universe is fire. And that's why you have the divine spark within, because you're going back to the fire, which is God. And so to achieve that God consciousness, maybe we deserve a shock at certain points in time so that the musical scale, the do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, can go up to another octave. That's where we're all going. The Mother Earth is going to the fifth dimension. Who goes with her? Question mark. Answer, who am I?
Thank you, Michael. We'll cut you off since we're at over 90 minutes now, but thank you for that. Shamir, thank you so much for your presentation today. You've awakened a lot of thoughts, I'm sure, in everybody here, and planted some seeds of what our finer work is. It's very fine moment-to-moment work, this Gnostic path. And so you've woken us up here this morning, and I so appreciate it. I'm wondering if there's any other comments or questions for Shamir before we leave for the day.
I just want to thank him for his presentation. It was really wonderful, and I learned a lot more about Gnosticism. Before it was kind of limited, but I never heard about the chakras in the perspective of the Gnostic perspective of chakras. So that was really interesting to learn about.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Well, thank you, Shamir. I would like to close our session today with the mantra of unification. So I'll share my screen and so that you can see the Soul School Network website, and the prayer is there. Excuse me. And I hope you can see my screen. So we'll just take a moment. The mantra of unification. The souls of all are one, and I am one with them. I seek to love, not hate. I seek to serve and not exact due service. I seek to heal, not hurt. Let pain bring due reward of light and love. Let the soul control the outer form and life and all events, and bring to light the love which underlies the happenings of the time. Let vision come and insight. Let the future stand revealed. Let inner union demonstrate and outer cleavages be gone. Let love prevail. Let all people love. Miigwech, namaste. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to each and every one of you. I know that there's 1,000 places you could choose to be this morning, and you're here with us, and we are very grateful for that. We invite your comments, your feedback, your ideas for speakers or conversations that we have in our open mic sessions. And so we are a community looking for your input about what you'd like to talk about on Sunday mornings. And our next open mic is in 2 weeks from now, so we hope to see you there. Again, Shamir, thank you very much. I think our takeaway today, we are aware of our chakras and what it is that we want to be doing. And so I appreciate that wisdom. Thank you. Hope everybody has a great week.
Thank
Thank you
you.
all. Ciao.